Hello everyone, I'd like to welcome you to this video titled Histograms. And what I would like for you to do is get out your Go Math book and turn to page 477. Get out your math journal and a pencil. Now the goal for this video is for you to understand how to display data in a histogram and also for you how to understand how to read a histogram. So some of you may be asking, what in the world is a histogram? Well, I'm glad you asked. A histogram is a type of bar graph whose bar represents the frequencies of numeric data with intervals. That sounds like a mouthful, so let's kind of unpack that definition a little bit here. Now, I have an example of a histogram. I'm sure some of you have seen them before, seen a histogram. So this histogram comes from this scenario that we have up at the top of our page. Now this says a bird watcher counts and records the number of birds at a bird feeder every morning at 9 o'clock for several days. Now this histogram represents this scenario. Okay, so what we can see here with the histogram, there's always going to be a title. We can see at the bottom it's labeled, and you can see there are intervals as well. Okay, so 1 to 4, 5 to 8, 9 to 12, 13 to 16. You can see with this histogram that the intervals are 4. Okay, now understand that whenever you have an interval here at the bottom, it has to be the same throughout. You cannot have an interval of 4 and then go to 10 and then go back to 6 and then 1 or whatever. It has to be the same. And then you can see on the y-axis here, we can see there are intervals 0 to 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So intervals of 2. And this shows you the frequency. So the y will always show you the frequency. So what does this mean? That at 9 o'clock, there were 1 to 4 birds 8 different times. Okay, so 8 times there were 1 to 4 birds. There were 5 to 8 birds 4 different times. 9 to 12, 2 different times. And we can see 13 to 16 birds looks like only 1 time. Now, it does not show us whether it's 2 birds. For this one, for example, 4 birds. It just says 1 to 4. So understand that the numeric data has intervals with your histogram. So you're not going to be able to necessarily tell the mean of the amount of birds that are there, or the mode, or the range, or anything like that. This just gives you the intervals of those different numeric data. Also, you can understand with a histogram that the bars touch each other. Okay, this represents that there's not any numbers in between 4 and 5, which we obviously know that, not 8 and 9 or anything like that. And also the bars do not overlap either. Okay, but the basic idea of a histogram, the taller the bar or the higher the bar goes here, we can see the more frequency it has. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at how you get from that histogram or from the data to the histogram. So what we have here, same scenario, a bird watcher counts and records the number of birds at a bird feeder every morning at 9 o'clock for several days. So we can see that this is the different data that he has recorded. Okay, now we have 12, 3, 8, 1, 1, 6, 10, 14, 3, 6, and so on. Okay, now with this, what you need to do is you have your data. Step 1, you need to make a frequency table, and this is a frequency table right here. Okay, within the frequency table, you see 2 things. You see the intervals and also the frequency there. Okay, so those are the 2 things that you need with your frequency table. And now what it says, divide the data into equal sized intervals of 4. You can see that's what they did here. Okay, if you have a larger range of data, you may even do it in intervals of 10. It all depends on the data that you have. Okay, so we see intervals of 4. So we see 1 to 4. And then you can see the frequency is 8. Why is it 8? Because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 numbers that go in the interval 1 to 4. And then you would keep recording your data based upon the frequency of 5 to 8. You can see there's 4 numbers, 5 to 8 and 9 And you can see 9 to 12 has 2, 13 to 16 has 1. And so you set up that frequency table first. Now you want to make your histogram. It's important to understand that the intervals are listed along the horizontal axis. You can see 1 to 4, 5 to 8, 9 to 12, 13 to 16. Those are the intervals. And the vertical axis shows the frequency. Now for each interval, you can see you draw a bar to show the number of days in that interval. Okay, so the frequency, so 1 to 4, 8 days there, 5 to 8, 4 days, and so on. The bars need to have equal widths. They should touch, but they do not overlap at all. Okay, so they touch because, again, there's not a number in between 4 to 5, so we can see that the dated or the intervals just pick up one right after the other. So important that the bars touch, but they do not overlap. So let's turn to page 479. We're going to make a histogram together. Okay, so it's problem 4. Now it says, Kim has started rating each movie she sees using a scale of 1 to 10 on an online site. Here are her ratings so far, and it says make a histogram of the data. So we have our data. The first thing we need to do is make a frequency table. Okay, so what we can see on the left side, the intervals, and then this is the frequency. So we have 1 to 2, the number's 1 to 2. So what we can see here is we have just one number from 1 to 2. And what I like to do with my frequencies, I just like to do the tally marks. It's a little bit easier of a way to do that. 3 to 4. So what you can see here, we have 1 and 3 to 4. And then another one. So 2 total. Now 5 to 6. You can see we have 1, 2, and 3 and 5 to 6. And then 7 to 8, you can see there's an 8, so we make a tally there. There's a 7, we make another tally. There's 2 8s. There's a 7. There's another 8. And there's a 7. So we can see 7 total from 7 to 8. And then finally, 9 to 10, there's 1 9, and then there's a 10. So we have 2 tallies for that. So make it a frequency chart. Using tallies can be a little bit easier than just trying to write numbers there. So if you want to write numbers, that's fine. But tallies for me makes it a little bit easier because you can just tally them off as you record the data. So now that we have our frequency table completed, now we can start making a histogram. So again, understanding that the horizontal axis has the intervals and the vertical axis has the frequencies. Okay, so we can see the interval of 1 to 2 only has 1, so we create a bar that goes up to the 1, and it's between the 0 and the 2. Okay, 3 to 4, we make a bar that goes right next to the 1 to 2 bar, and we can see there's only a frequency of 2, so we make sure the bar aligns with the 2 on the horizontal, the vertical axis. 5 to 6, you can see there are a total of 3. Again, create a bar that's in line with the 3 on the frequency and goes right above the 5 to 6 on the intervals. So 7 to 8, you can see this is the highest new data here that we have. 7 to 8 frequency is 7, so make sure that the bar goes and aligns with the 7 on the vertical axis. And then finally 9 to 10, there's only 2. So make a bar, again, touching that 7 to 8 bar that aligns with the number 2. So this is how you create a histogram. Again, what you start out with first, you have your data, and then you make your frequency table. That is a very important part. And then from there, you complete the histogram by using bars to represent the data. Now let's take a look at the problem on page 481. At the very top, it says, an amusement park employee records the ages of the people who ride the new roller coaster during a 15-minute period. Now we can see the ages of the writers right in front of us. And now for number 5, it says complete the frequency table, then make a histogram of the data. Now, what we see here, there are intervals from 10 to 9. So what that means for this frequency table is that we are going to make intervals of 10. So it has 10 to 9. So that means it has to be 20 to 29 is the next interval. And then the next interval after that is 30 to 39. And then we have 40 to 49. And I want you to write this in with me. And then 50 to 59. It is very important with your intervals that whichever one you begin with, they began with 10, that it has to be the same throughout. You cannot have an interval of 10 and then 8 and then, oh, there's not too many from 50 to 59, so we're going to make that just an interval of 2. It has to be the same interval throughout. So that's very important to understand. Now, what I would like for you to do is to tally up the frequencies of this data and fill in the frequency part of this frequency chart. And then when you press play, I'll have the answers for you. So I'd like for you to pause the video now. So you can see the different frequencies from the different intervals. We have 9, 7, 3, 4, and 2, and make sure that your answers are right with mine. And then now the next step is you're going to complete the histogram. Okay, so start labeling the different sides, and I have it for you and on the right side of the screen here. So you can see, remember that the horizontal axis will always have the intervals. You can see 10 to 19, 20 to 29, and so on. Also, it's labeled. That's the age of writers. And then the vertical axis has the frequency. We see from 0 to 10 here are the frequencies, and there are intervals of 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. So intervals of 2. So make sure you label your histogram like I have. Now, once you do that, what I would like for you to do is to complete this histogram. And I want you to pause the video and complete the histogram. You may even need to pause and label it and then complete it. And when you press play, I will have the answers for you. So pause the video now. So now you can see the histogram is completed. You can see from 10 to 19, that's a frequency of 9, so that's aligned with the 9. The 20 to 29 is 7. The 30 to 39 is 3. 40 to 49 is 4. And the 50 to 59 is 2. Okay, now let's take a look at number 6. It says, describe 2 things that you know about the writers who are represented by the data. So 2 things, and I would like for you to write these down. Out of the 25 writers, where am I getting 25 from? If I add all the frequencies up, that'll give me 25, or a total of 25 different numbers. So we know that no writers were younger than 10, okay, because our intervals start from 10 to 19. So right away we know that nobody's going to be younger than 10. And also, or older than 59. Why do we know that? Because the highest interval goes up to 59. So that's why we know that there's not any writers younger than 10 or older than 59. And also, when we're taking a look at the greatest number of writers, we can see it's between 10 and 19. How do we know that? Because 10 to 19 had a frequency of 9, and also it's the tallest bar in our histogram. So just remember with histograms, it is important to make sure that you keep your data organized and also make that frequency table first. The intervals must be the same throughout your frequency table. Also make sure the bars are the same width, they also touch, and from that you can easily read a histogram and the data that it represents. So this concludes the video on histograms. If you have any questions about this concept, please come and see me.